Hello, this is Project 5, a Dockerized Rust Lambda function pushed to AWS Elastic Container Registry through Gitlab CI/CD. I'll talk about code here, and then we'll talk about the AWS side as well. So you have the main.rs and then the setup.rs. Then the CI/CD is in this file, Gitlab CI. The Docker file is also here. And then the initial data which is uploaded can be found here. So I'll go through each of them. To upload the data into the vector database, we use a setup.rs. These are the structures, and then this is the main function. When it starts, it checks whether the collection name is present, and if it's not there, it creates it. Then it goes on to locate the file, and there's a file with the data to be uploaded. It reads every line. So for every line, this is what it does. It loads the record, which is basically a JSON structure, into this, does some tests, and eventually gets the embedding by taking it to Cohere, and then Cohere returns the embedding. This is the main focus. Then for each embedding, what it does is that it creates a point struct. Point is the list of the records in embedded stroke JSON format. And this is how it is. So if we take the point struct, it has an ID, a payload, and this payload is basically the JSON structure. You can find that here. And then we have the vector. This is coming from the embedding. So this is from Cohere. This is coming from the embeddings. So once this structure is created, it is pushed to the point structure. Then eventually after the loop, that means that all the lines have been worked on, and we have all the records in the point structure. Then we use this function in the Quadrant client to push the data to the Quadrant vector database. Okay, so we'll go on to the main.rs. This one is what the Lambda function actually uses. So the data is already there. Someone wants to use the data, wants to do a search. The structures can be found here. This is the function that does the searching, and then this is the entry point. So when the Lambda function is called, it first checks to be sure that the collection is there. If the collection is not there, it fails it. So if the collection is there, then it calls the search function. So this is a search function. It takes in these parameters, and in here what it does is that it creates the embedding structure, which is basically what Cohere will return. Then it takes the query, what the person doing the search actually asked for. It takes that to Cohere over here, and then we get the embedded version of the text the person is searching. Then from there, it takes that embedding here into Quadrant to do a search using search points. That also returns the result of the search in the response body. Then finally, a response is created. If everything went well, 200 It's an indication that everything went well. Then the body of the response, which came from Qdrant, which is basically the result of the search, is passed to this new body. And then this new body is what is eventually sent out as the output of the function doing the search. So this is an overview of what these functions in this document do. I'll quickly talk about the CI/CD part. There are two main stages. One builds and then one deploys. So for the build part, it does the standard linting, formatting, testing, and then building. The deploy part is what I would like to talk more about, because this is what creates the Docker file over here, and then it will push it to the ECR. So every time there is a change to this repository, the Docker file is built and then pushed to ECR. And then I'll go to ECR. There's a repository, and when the push is done, it comes here. The Docker file image comes here. So if we look at it, we can see that there are these three images. This is the latest one. So anytime a new one comes, it becomes the latest, and that's what is finally used. Then I'll talk about the Lambda functions. We have project 2 with image and then just project 2. You see that the package type for project 2 is zip, and the package type for project 2 with image is image. The difference is that when you use cargo lambda deploy, it comes in as a zip. The data is zipped and sent to lambda to create the lambda function. However, this one uses the image that was pushed during CI/CD by GitLab. Okay, so there's the information for this one. Then I'll go next to the API, because from the image we create the Lambda function, and then from the function we create the API. Over here we have the same scenario playing out. We have the API created from the zip-based Lambda function, and then the API created from the image-based Lambda function. I'll focus on this one. So you can see that there is this stage, which is what is finally being used. So this is a URL, and before you get this URL, we create, let me go there. So we create the endpoint, we create the post method, and then we deploy it. So it's after deploying that we get the endpoint, the link to use. Okay, so I'll talk about Cohere. There isn't much to be seen here because everything happens through the API. However, the API keys were created. This is what I use, and you need that to be able to remotely get access to it through the API. Then we'll talk about Qdrant. To start with Qdrant, you create a cluster that gives you the database. So this is the cluster I created. Then we go to the dashboard of this cluster and create the collection. So if you're not creating the collection from the code, which is what we have, which is also possible, then you can create it here. If I open this collection, you see the point. We are seeing the JSON part and then the vector part. So you can see that there are two aspects to this point: the vector representation and the JSON representation. And there are about 40 of them. I'll just show you the graph for this one. So this is a graph for this. It's also possible to do some executions from here. If you run this, it gives you the collections that are available. And if you do this, it gives you the details of the collection. And you can run various queries directly in Qdrant as well. For instance, if you provide this information and run, there's the result you get. So after all that, we use the endpoint we picked from the gateway. This is it. And then we provide the query string. So what this is basically saying is that give us movies that have descriptions with the name Keanu Reeves in there, the name close to that in there. And it could be that he's the actor or the director. It doesn't really matter. Once there's something close to Keanu Reeves in there, it will pick it. And so if we execute this, I'm using Postman, then I get these two. So you can see that Keanu Reeves is here as the actor, and the key, which is the movie name, we could have used movie name for this, but the key, which is the movie name, is John Wick. And in the second one, we see it here, and it says lead actor, and the key here, or the movie's name, is The Matrix. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.